To log on to Classter, the simplest way is to go to the school website at aan.ac.cy, and on the site you'll find a link to Classter here, and you can click it. Or otherwise you can go to https://aan.classter.com. That might not be helpful the first time, but if you've been to the Classter login screen before, you can just go back to it in your history, and when you type it in, often it'll be the first thing that you find. Depends on what you go to the most often. But either way, it'll present you with a login screen. You give the username that you've been given and the password you've been given, and then you'll be able to log in. And a typical dashboard for a parent looks like this. If you have more than one child in the school, then you'll be given a choice between those two students. In this case, we seem to have two copies of the same, but you'll be able to choose between those two quite easily. Now, the dashboard itself gives you access to a large amount of information without really going anywhere. One of the most important parts of it is the calendar, and this is where you'll be able to see homework that teachers have put up for your child, and you'll be able to see details on those homeworks by clicking on them as well. Right now things are going to be quite low on detail, but once we start using the system as a school, you'll be able to see the details of the actual work that they have to do, along with any other resources that they need to have access to. Now, if you have more than one student in the school, it's important to note that in general, although we're using dummy data here right now, in general you'll be able to choose which student's information you want to see by clicking on either of the names. In this case, there's just the same name, but if you have several kids, if you have 3 kids in the school, you will see 3 names here, and you'll be able to choose between them. Now, once you've got around the dashboard on Classter, it's worth then looking at the other sections in here. Now, for homework for now, we're going to use the calendar, and you will see work on the calendar when a teacher schedules that work, and they'll be able to see when it's due and everything. You can see the teachers that your child has by clicking on this link here, and you'll be able to select the particular student if you've got several, and then you'll be able to show them. And the email address of that teacher will be available to you in case you need to contact them about anything. Also, sometimes on the dashboard you will see announcements and other things like that, so it's worth just scrolling to see what's available to you. As a parent, you get to see some things, but other things you don't, that aren't relevant to you, but your children will be able to see other things here as well, such as announcements, and toward the bottom they have a link for going to Office 365 quickly from Classter. Now, the major part of what we're going to look at today is the academic progress that your child is making, and the attendance. And so let's look at the progress. So we have these 3 areas here. We have assessment marks, term marks, and descriptive marking. At a normal point in the term, you're going to be looking at assessment marks. The term marks are important, and we'll see what you'll see when you look at that. But for now, let's take a quick look at the assessment marks. Every time a teacher assesses your child, they'll be giving a mark. That mark's a percentage, and that mark will be visible to your child and also to you. So, if you have multiple children in the school, choose the relevant name. And the simplest way to see how that child is doing in a subject is to search for that subject name. So if I search for computing, you can see, without typing the whole thing, I can see that I have entries from computing. At the bottom of the list, it says that it's showing 1 to 10 of 16 entries for that, filtered from 211 total entries, and what that means is that there have been, your child will have been assessed 211 times across the whole school, and 16 of these are from computing. And I can click here where it says show 10 entries, and I can choose a bigger number. I always choose 100 because then it doesn't matter how many I have, and then it will show you the full list all at once, and you'll be able to see how your child has been doing. The marks again are out of 100. The literal in here is, whether they got an A or a B and things like that. And we can see the date of the assessment. Now, if that's blank, That could be because it's an assessment that the teacher has scheduled, but they haven't marked it yet. They might be waiting for the deadline for the homework, or it might be a classwork that they haven't finished working on in the lessons yet. If you see a 0, that does mean that your child was marked 0 for that assessment, and that's very different. That often is the case for classwork that wasn't handed in, or for a homework that wasn't handed in. So those are always worth having a conversation about. Now, the term marks, at this point in time, they won't give you very much, really. But I'm going to show you the interface so you know how to use it later on when the midterm reports are released. Well, not midterm, the end of term reports. So again, select the correct student. The registrations is always just the defaults. Whatever the default is, leave it as that. And you can leave these how you want to. But basically, when we release the report, you will see term 1 in this list, and you may well see mock 1 in there as well. And we can preview it. Now, right now, we'll just get a blank page because these reports haven't been released. But when they are released, you'll see something quite like this. So it'll be the subjects, the periods per week that those subjects are taught, the percentage mark, and this is the percentage mark for all of the classwork, homework, and tests, along with the letter grade and an average. The average right now is going to be the same, but of course, as we do the mock exam, term 2, the third term, the final exam, if it's Key Stage 3, that average will be more meaningful. And you'll see an overall average as well, along with conduct and the number of absences that the student has had. And that should look fairly familiar if you're used to the reports that we do as a school. So, that's the academic progress part of it. We don't use descriptive marking at this time for secondary students, but if you have a primary student, it might be worth taking a look. And certainly you'll have more information if you need to see that when primary gives out reports. Also, we have attendance. And the attendance figures will run from the first day of school by default until the last day of this academic year. Those are the defaults, but you can choose different dates by clicking on the date and just selecting a different day. If you need to, you can change the month up at the top. And the categories that we have, it's best to leave it as all, and the status, EA or PA, those are excused absences basically. UA is an unexcused absence. And those are absences where we haven't received a letter from the parents excusing that absence for some reason. And also the tardies, that's just another word for lates. So if we just look at these absences as they are, we can see that this student has 12 unauthorized absences and has been late 4 times since the start of the academic year. And we can see that they're broken down by date. So here's the date, and it will say which periods the student was absent for. So this student was absent until the end of period 5, or some point in period 5 toward the end, and then they were marked present in the next 2 lessons that they had. The type is unauthorized, and the category is unexcused, which means that that will count towards the final unauthorized absence total for the student. And it's always worth making sure that you contact the school to excuse any absences that are excused, because they can have a far higher number of excused absences than unexcused absences before they risk failing the year. So you can see the list, and you can see all of the entries there, and these records are kept up to date on an hourly basis, essentially, as the student is marked either present or absent. And if they're marked absent, you will see them on this list. Of course, we won't see the presences because they outnumber the absences by a very long way. Now, we encourage you to spend some time getting to learn how to use Classter, coming and checking regularly. As we've seen, you can see all of the homeworks that are set for your child. You can see their academic progress. It's worth noting that they can see this as well. They will have their own username and password, and they can see all of the things that you've seen and a bit more as well. And they can filter for a particular subject in exactly the same way as you can. And then they can see the individual grades that they have. So if there are any issues, of course, you are quite welcome to contact the school. We will be releasing more videos as we release more features. But for now, once you get your username and password, we encourage you to just sign in, have a look around, and see how your child is progressing in the term so far.